Alright guys, we're gonna watch the Horrifying Texarkana Painkiller episode of BuzzFeed Unsolved. If you hear me coughing, that's because there's like some ventilation issues and I have a candle lit, so I'm kinda in a little bit of smoke, but whatever.
This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we take a look into the Texarkana Phantom Killer, a case that has been referred to as, quote, the #1
There was a
unsolved
movie
murder
about
case
this and
in
it was
Texas
shit.
history, end quote.
#1, baby.
Yeah.
I love it.
I don't think they have like a big board in the Texas police station where
Do you think they vote?
oh, it seems all relative, right?
Yeah, I guess so. But they seem pretty resolute about this guy being at the top of the heap.
And it's a rowdy town, you'll see that.
Is it really?
It's a rowdy town.
You been there?
No, I haven't been there, but I read it's a rowdy town.
Fun to read about a rowdy town.
A rowdy town with two rowdy boys. Let's get into it. On February 22nd, 1946, in the Texas-Arkansas border town appropriately named Texarkana, Jimmy Hollis, 25, and Mary Jean Larry, 19, went on a date to the movies and began driving back to Mary Jean's home. On the way, they stopped their car on a quiet, unpaved road about 100 yards away from some houses in a residential neighborhood.
That's what I like
There
to
you go.
hear. Yeah, you know what they're doing.
Doing
How many,
it.
Here we go, wait. Yeah.
Magic bow wow.
The way in this
It's
scenario,
still funny.
in this
And
scenario
it's
where
2019. When did this bit start? Like God, this had to be like caveman times.
you think like a Neanderthal looked at his other Neanderthal pals and went,
Yeah, probably. It's one of the world's greatest bits. I feel like people don't do it enough nowadays because we take it for granted. Spread that around this year. You know, if you see your two friends and you think maybe they've been smooching behind your back, be like, I know what you guys are up to a little.
I actually don't think your angle's catching it. I think we can still see your face a little bit, so you might have to turn. If I turn.
It's like we're both making out.
After about 10 minutes, a man walked up. As Mary Jean would later relate, quote, he wore a white mask over his head with cutout places for his eyes and mouth. He pointed a flashlight and pistol at us. He came up on the driver's side of the car and told Jimmy something like this, I don't want to kill you, fellow, so do what I say.
Uh-oh.
Both Jimmy and Mary Jean got out of the
He's gonna
car.
be dead.
The assailant made Jimmy take off his pants, then hit him twice over the head, cracking
Why?
Jimmy's skull and knocking him unconscious. The attacker then tried to sexually assault and rob
shit.
Mary Jean.
Oh, okay. It did. Yeah, it was good. It got a little rough.
Yeah, it's a little rough.
Interesting
Yeah.
that he would go through the theatrics of wearing a mask.
Yeah, anytime someone wears a mask and it's a serial killer situation, you wonder, did they intend to maybe let them go? Because the only reason why you're wearing a mask is so that they can't then identify you.
Yeah, they can't identify
Yeah,
you.
that's true.
If a killer approached me and he had a mask on, I would feel a little bit better about my chances of surviving. Because if he
Yeah.
walks up with a gun and his, like, you could just see his face, like I could see it's your face, I know that's probably the last thing I'm gonna see. And right now I actually thought of staring into those dead cold eyes. And if that's the last thing I see on this earth, I made some mistakes along the way.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Jean pleaded with the attacker, telling him they didn't have any money. The attacker hit Mary Jean, knocking her to the ground. When she got up, the man told her to run. Mary Jean took off down the road, but was wearing high heels. The assailant
Aw, man,
quickly
kick him
overtook
off!
her and hit her again, knocking her to the ground, where he began to abuse her. At this point, Jimmy struggled to his feet and managed to stop a passing car.
Did he pull up his
It
pants?
stopped the assailant saw the car lights and fled from Mary Jean.
Did he pull
Both
up his
Jimmy and Mary
pants?
Jean received medical treatment. Jimmy spent over 12 days
man.
recovering in the hospital. This guy did literally get his skull cracked. And
Skull
still
fracture.
was able to get up and flag down another
Brains
car,
are
which then
resilient.
saved their lives.
Yeah.
Good for Jimmy.
I mean, it could
Way to
just
go,
be like
Jimmy.
a fracture, right? I don't know how skulls really work.
From what I read, it was
Pretty bad.
pretty severe crack. From the description, she thought that he had shot him. That's how loud the cracking noise was, which is not good.
So,
Because I mean, like,
oh for
let me see how loud I can crack. I'm gonna use. That doesn't really sound like a gun, but that's because this is my largest crochet hook.
2.
Yeah, 0 for 2. But this, as you'll see, would be just the first of his attacks. In the mid-40s, Texarkana was a relatively violent place.
man.
Killings, robberies, and other crimes were very common.
I wonder
It
how
might
their
make
police
sense
situation
then,
is like
while the
since it's a
attack
border
on Jimmy
town.
and Mary Jean was brutal, the community didn't pay it much attention until another attack occurred a month later.
Uh-oh.
This one fatal.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, it must be an upsetting place if a masked man trying to assault 2 people is just passing news.
Yeah.
Shit.
Like, oh, did you hear about that, the masked phantom
Fucking
who tried to
sucks.
murder 2 people? Oh, yeah. Hey, let's go get a soda pop.
On
Got
the
a
morning
soda
of
pop.
March 24th, authorities found the bodies of 29-year-old Richard L. Griffin and 17-year-old Polly Ann Moore in a 1941 Oldsmobile on what was then known as a lover's lane. Both had been shot in the back of the head. Richard was found between the 2 front seats on his knees, with his head in his hands. His pants pockets were inside out, thought to be the result of someone trying to rob him. Polly Ann was discovered face down in the back seat of the car, though there was evidence that suggested she may have been murdered on a blanket outside the car and placed there later. The couple had last been seen around 10 p.m. the night before, eating dinner with Richard's sister. They had been shot with what was thought to have been a Colt .32 caliber pistol, and any footprints that would have been around the car had been washed away throughout the day.
We gotta give
Fucking
kids
mother.
places to make out.
That's unfortunately most of these serial killer cases happen in a lover's lane scenario.
That's what I'm saying. We gotta give them a well-lit area that is central to a town's location.
Maybe some water, vending machines nearby.
Oh
Yeah.
some soda pops, some sprees, whatever, you know.
What's a spree?
Just a place with a bunch. Well, I probably don't want to bring hammocks into the equation because smooching might elevate. But
I think fucking in a tent in a hammock is not a good situation.
That is true. Also, a hammock
Like-
would be really hard to escape if a serial killer did come up to you while you
Yeah.
were snoozing in a hammock.
sure.
It's impossible.
it's just a murder bag.
You're trapped in a little, like in a
just
little,
like-
a little spider net. Though there weren't many clues for authorities to go off of, 3 days after the killings, at least 50 people had been asked about the murder, and over 100 false leads had been investigated.
Come
While
on.
this attack, ending in the murder of a young couple, turned more heads than the first assault, the community still believed these events to be isolated incidents.
And here
3
comes
weeks
event
later,
number
their
3.
indifference would change into a frenzy of fear. On April 14th, authorities found the bodies of 15-year-old Betty Jo Booker and 16-year-old Paul Martin. The previous night, the 2 teens had attended a band performance at the Veterans of Foreign Wars Club, where Betty Jo played alto saxophone. They were
I think in the shitty movie they had her be a tuba player because they wanted to have her killed by the killer just tying. Wait, not a tuba. It was like a slide trombone. They made her to be a slide trombone player because they wanted to have a kill of her being tied to a tree. The killer has a knife to the slide trombone. Plays the slide trombone as he's stabbing her with a knife on the thingy on the trombone, which was stupid.
also seen leaving the dance around 1:30 in the morning. Paul had
And I
been
mean, like,
shot
they
4
actually
times
watched
and was
that.
discovered
There's like
in
an
a
annual
rural
event where they
area
watched
on
that
North Park
shitty
Road.
movie in
Betty Jo
Texarkana.
had been raped and shot twice. Her body was found up in the woods about a mile away.
So escalating, getting
Yeah.
worse.
Getting worse. He's getting a little more bold. One thing you can note, though, because you always see the trends of these serial killers,
Yeah.
all of these were couples.
Yeah.
Both had been shot with a .32 caliber Colt, the same weapon thought to be used in the previous attack. This being the third attack in less than 2 months, now with 4 young people dead, the community was finally paying attention.
Yeah.
And they were panicked. When their husbands and fathers were away for work, women and children would move into the aptly named Hotel Grimm in downtown Texarkana.
Sort of like a staycation.
No, it's
Oh,
not a
man.
staycation. It's more like people around us are getting murdered. Let's all huddle together under the roof of a place named the Hotel Grimm.
Well,
I
clearly
hope it's
a
named
popular
after someone's last
establishment, and
name.
If everybody trusts them, they're going there as a place of refuge.
I suppose.
Maybe stop being so judgy of these.
The thing is, maybe
kind
I
people.
just don't have the insight that you have, because this town, as I said, was a rowdy town. They even called it Little Chicago. And as we all know, that's where you hail from.
I hail from Big Chicago.
Murder Town, USA.
You know, there's some big issues there.
Yeah.
Others bought guns and crafted homemade security systems from kitchenware and wire around their homes. Typically bustling streets went quiet. The Texarkana Gazette named the attacker the Phantom Killer. And it doesn't help that the press named him the Phantom Killer. They gave him
Aw,
a nickname.
man.
If you give someone a nickname, it's a compliment. You should never be doing that for the serial
Don't puff
killer.
them up. Don't puff them up.
Because he probably
We need to name serial killers. We need to give them insulting names. That's what we need to do.
read that in the paper next day and was like, that's got a ring to it. I'm gonna get some business cards printed.
Yeah.
Tillman Johnson,
Reminds
one
me,
of
I
the
gotta
lead
print 5 business
investigators, said,
cards.
quote, "We were constantly getting calls, mostly at night, about prowlers. People would call about any noise they heard at all," end quote. Everyone was afraid they would be the next victim of the Phantom Killer.
Seems like a little bit of a stretch for really any Texan in the 1940s to say, you know what, I think I might need to buy a gun.
It is also fun that they're setting little Kevin McAllister booby traps around
Love
the
that.
house.
I think people perhaps undervalue booby traps.
I don't think they're that practical in real life.
They could
Yeah,
be
I
if
mean,
you
there
do it
was like
well.
legal
Who
cases
are you trying to
one.
booby trap on a regular basis? Your cat? Your sweet Obie?
He's a sweet boy.
You trying to booby trap that cat?
No, I don't.
Okay, I remember a legal case where a guy's house where he wasn't living kept getting robbed, so he set up a booby trap and it shot an intruder in the legs and it crippled the intruder. The intruder actually won the court case because, like, a judge was like, yeah, that situation's kind of fucked up. The owner of the house wasn't in the house, therefore, he didn't really have a legal reason to defend his castle.
No, I want to do the opposite. I want to booby hug him.
Booby hug him.
I don't know what the term is.
It's
whatever the
definitely
opposite
not
of a
that.
booby trap is.
I'll tell you the
I want
term
to
is
lay
not-
down a path of rose petals.
Dude, that's getting
Come
romantic.
This way, sir.
I tell you what,
You're a
you go-
sweet boy with a fuzzy face. I'll give you a little hug.
On May 3rd, 37-year-old farmer Virgil Starks was listening to the radio when a
yes,
22
yeah.
caliber round tore
Oh
through his
my
front
God.
porch window and hit him. His wife Katie left their bedroom to find Virgil bleeding in the living room. Katie went to call for help when
Oh,
the attacker shot her
no.
twice in the face. The
Fucking
bullets
shit.
knocked some of her teeth out, but she
Ah.
survived. Ducking to avoid more shots, she
Damn.
made her way back to the bedroom. As the attacker tried to break
Oh,
in through
man.
the kitchen window, Katie escaped out the front door with a bullet stuck under her tongue
Ugh.
and trailing blood behind her. Katie made it to a nearby farmhouse where she
Oh,
was
man.
taken to the hospital and survived. Virgil, however,
She's
died.
probably like a badass.
I don't like any mouth teeth stuff. Don't
Ugh.
like it.
No, you know, like when people get in fights and you can kind of see like the teeth coming like
Ugh.
falling out of their mouth.
I've got big issues with teeth, even if I'm sitting with someone who is taking a fork and eating and it scrapes against their teeth.
Oh, yeah, like they do a drill.
Oh, I
We're
don't
also kind of
like
lightly glossing over the fact that she got shot in the face twice.
Yeah, that's worse than a fork scraping.
An
Yeah.
indication of the fear the Phantom Killer had instilled in the community. 20 to 30 police officers converged on the Starks farmhouse. Police tried to gather evidence and interview possible suspects and witnesses. According to Johnson, quote, "People would stand out near the front of their homes and yell at you to identify yourself before you got too close. You had to identify yourself or you would get
Ooh,
shot."
yeah.
End quote.
Understandable.
So yeah, I mean, we're on high alert here.
Yeah.
If this was me, I'd have a double-barrel shotgun pointed directly at the door at all times.
You'd probably have to have shifts, because I'd want someone out there at night too.
I'm
Yeah.
staying up day and night. I don't sleep.
Well, then now you're setting yourself up for that's vulnerable because
That's
you're
true.
gonna fall asleep.
Maybe I'll take a
Yeah.
nap.
Yeah, take a nap.
I'll take a nap and then it'll
Hey,
be.
I'll
Let's do
tag in.
shifts. You're right.
Yeah.
Shifts are right. Shifts are good. I
Yeah.
don't want it to be. I've never even shot a gun, so
You've never shot a gun?
no,
You don't have to.
I don't think I have to. Authorities followed bloody footprints left by the killer that went from the house across the highway, where they eventually lost the trail. While this incident exacerbated the fear of the Phantom Killer, it's possible this killing was done by someone else. The other
Yeah.
attacks had targeted people younger than the Starks and had taken
It's like a
place in
50-50-ish
cars, not
thing.
homes. In addition, Virgil was shot with a 22 caliber semi-automatic pistol,
Yeah,
a different weapon than the
gun.
32 caliber used
Mostly
in the
was-
previous murders of Betty Jo and Paul. Still, this incident was included in the Phantom investigation as panic swept the area. Authorities took to dressing as
Yeah, I mean, who knows if the guy was like mixing up his MO?
young couples in an effort to lure the murderer, but it appeared the Phantom was done. 2 months later, with no more Phantom murders, the community's fear began to decrease, and life started to get back to normal. No
No,
one
it
was
doesn't.
ever found guilty of the murders.
Oh, we're going into who it was.
About
Yeah.
the dressing up?
Yep, exactly right.
Yeah, I thought so.
I'm imagining an old Texan man with a large bushy mustache. It's like a chubby Sam Elliott, a cop hat on, a white T-shirt, pack of cigarettes rolled up in it.
You're imagining a clearly adult, burly police officer
Exactly
trying to
right.
look like a 16-year-old boy.
100%.
And it's hilarious.
And next to him, also an adult male.
With a big old mustache
Yes.
and a wig on.
Sort of like just maybe
Yeah.
pretending to make out. Or maybe actually making out.
Or
like,
pre-recorded noises of smooching noises.
Oh! Like like a Ferris Bueller situation. Just sort of.
That's like cartoon kissing. No one sounds like that when they're kissing.
Ugh.
With that, it's time to look into possible theories behind the Texarkana phantom murders, of which there are basically only two. The first theory is H.B. Duty Tennyson, a college student who confessed to some of the killings in a note left behind after he killed himself. According to a newspaper from the day of his death, a sheriff reportedly said the note read, quote, "Why did I take my own life? Well, when you committed 2 double murders, you would too. Yes, I did kill Betty Jo Booker and Paul Martin in the city park that night, and killed Mr. Stark and tried to get Mrs. Stark." End quote. According to Duty's cousin, forensic psychiatrist Dr. John Tennyson, Duty had connections to all of the victims. He was allegedly an usher at the theater where some victims of the attacks had seen movies before their deaths, and had been in the same high school band as Betty Jo. According to Dr. Tennyson, one of Duty's friends lived under the same roof as the sister of Katie Starks.
All right.
So he had some connections to some of the victims.
Mm-hmm.
But I will note that the sources, when it came to that note in particular, were shaky at best.
So
It
it's
was
sus.
just him. What do they say these things? Why is this hearsay?
People want to have
Answer me.
It's like that. People in the public want answers. There's this horrible thing happening in their town. They look to the authorities for answers, and if they don't have them, there's outrage. So you need to have something to say.
Interesting.
So, as a result, maybe some shoddy reporting.
But it is fairly convenient that he has all these connections to them. And
It is. He's a very interesting suspect for sure. But
He probably isn't the
for
guy.
me, because there's that note and these connections, and yet he still wasn't indicted for the crimes, there must have been something that ruled him out outright.
Yeah.
Our other theory is 29-year-old Ewell Lee Swinney. Around the time of the attacks, Arkansas State Trooper Max Tackett observed that cars were reported stolen and later found abandoned whenever the Phantom Killer made an attack. Following this lead
That's
led police to
an
stake out a
interesting
downtown
connection.
parking lot on June 28, 1946, where a stolen car was abandoned. This led to the arrest of 21-year-old Peggy Swinney, the new wife of one Ewell Lee Swinney. While in custody, Peggy gave many detailed statements explaining how her husband committed the murders of Betty Jo and Paul, though descriptions of her own involvement varied from statement to statement. On July 23rd, Peggy gave
I'm
a
kinda
statement saying
doubting
that on
this.
April 13th, the day before the bodies of Betty Jo Booker and Paul Martin were found, she and Ewell parked at Spring Lake Park and drank some beers. According to her statement, Ewell left the car saying he had to, quote, take a leak, end quote. Peggy said, quote, he was gone from the car about 1 hour when I heard something that sounded like 2 gunshots. It was just getting daylight when he came back to the car and started driving out of the park at a rapid rate of speed. When he came back to the car, I saw that his clothes were wet up to his knees and damp on up to his waist. End quote. She says that
After
her
we do
boyfriend
this
steps out of the
somehow,
car to go pee,
she needs to be
and then he
taken.
takes a long time, comes back, and when he comes back, he's very rushed.
she's
He's
heard
driving.
gunshots.
She's heard gunshots. He's driving very fast. He's wet, not because of the pee. I imagine because he.
Creek or something?
Yeah.
It's near a
maybe.
lake, so.
It's near
Maybe he also peed in the
Washing off the
creek or a
blood.
body of water.
She does seem to have a fair amount of details.
She does, and there's one detail that she has that is very interesting that she knows, and we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
On July 24th, Peggy gave another statement. In this one, she said Ewell had said, quote, he was going out to the park to rob someone, end quote. Peggy said she went with Ewell to Paul Martin's car, where Ewell pointed a gun at the young couple and told them to get out of the car. Peggy said that she refused to search the teenagers, which angered Ewell, and he shot Martin twice. Peggy then allegedly held Betty Jo in place while Ewell got his car. He drove it back, made both girls get into the car, drove west, turned around, and shot Paul 2 more times, as he had apparently been able to get up and move after the
does this
first 2
connect with the
shots.
forensics?
He took Betty Jo into the woods while Peggy waited in the car. When Ewell returned, he told Peggy he had tried to, quote, get some, end quote, with a young girl, and then shot her after she refused.
Wait, so this is the same attack but a different story?
So she
Yeah.
gave multiple statements about this day that they were at the
This
lake.
shit ain't
One version,
lining
she says
up.
he left and came back. This version, she says
She was well involved with
she
all
was
this.
somewhat involved, and she said that he was going to go rob these people.
I see.
Well, Peggy's story shifted. She crucially told police information that only someone who had been at the scene of the crime would have known.
So
For
she might have been
instance,
fucking
Peggy
stuff
mentioned
up.
how Paul's date book was thrown into some bushes, a fact that only Bowie County Sheriff W.H. Bill Presley knew at the time, as he had been the one who'd found the book.
Sounds like she knows what she's talking about.
Or she pulled it out of her ass and got lucky.
Okay, so there's two scenarios, right? She was there when the murder happened, or
She happened upon it.
she happened upon it while they were at the lake, found these bodies, saw that there was that in the bush, and then ran away, and then realized later maybe they'll find out I was there.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
will say that if scenario 2 was true, it does not make a bit of sense for her to be like, yeah, we decided we were going to rob them.
Oh, they might find out I was there. I know what. I'll tell them we killed them. That doesn't make any sense.
I know, I'll tell them he killed them, and I thought about a robbery.
And I just kind of was
but
there.
I wasn't down.
Ewell was arrested at the Arkansas Motor Coach bus station as he arrived back from Atlanta, where he had attempted to sell a stolen car. While his
What an
wife was
idiot.
willing to talk to investigators, Ewell was not.
Yeah,
Critically,
he's doing
while
smart.
Peggy did give statements to investigators, she could not be forced to testify against Ewell, as they had gotten married mere hours before
What?
police arrested her.
I'm having a hard time taking a temperature on these two.
That is a weirdly. Why the fuck is that a weird. Why is that a rule? That's a fucking weird ass rule.
Do they love each other?
I don't know,
Clearly
man.
not, because she's...
She's, ratting him out, but that also could be self-preservation. She could have been
Yeah.
involved.
Do they get off on this?
That's what I was saying, like a weird Bonnie and Clyde.
But Bonnie and Clyde stuck together. Bonnie
Yeah.
wasn't like, hey, you gotta check out this Clyde guy.
Ewell was taken to Little Rock for a truth serum shot, but he was
Truth
given too
serum's
much,
bullshit.
which caused him to pass out. Investigator Tillman Johnson said, quote, "I think that if we had just kept him here in Texarkana and kept questioning him, we
Yeah.
would have gotten the truth out of him eventually," end quote.
Or the truth serum's not real.
Yeah, I mean, we've come across this very elusive
Not a real
truth
thing.
serum.
We've looked it up.
In most of these cases, I mean, whatever it is, apparently you could overdose on it. You could take too much truth serum, too much serum.
Too much serum, man. Oh.
Yeah.
So you're bringing in this quack doctor who's like,
He's just,
"Oh, he's not telling the truth, give him more.
okay, let me inject him with my lemon juice cocktail. I'll
He's
tell him, make
looking,
him.
looking pretty woozy, Doc.
Peggy was imprisoned for her own involvement in the car theft, but eventually released. Ewell was sentenced to life in state prison for being a habitual criminal after the auto theft charge, but was released on parole in 1973 when the Texas Court
let
of
him
Criminal
go?
Appeals decided that he didn't have adequate
Yeah, he didn't.
representation on a car theft charge from 1941.
Yeah, he didn't
Ewell
when he was
died in
drugged.
a nursing home in Dallas in 1994.
Crazy to think you can kill 5 people in the 1940s and then live long enough to see Jurassic Park in theaters.
Thank you for that.
Discuss some other things.
Thank you for that
It's just
perspective.
crazy. I'm just trying to put into perspective the fact that this man so long ago committed these crimes
And then he
so
saw
far into the future.
and he saw the rise of industrial light and magic.
Yeah, it's kind of
They're
nuts.
wizards.
Yeah, I don't really know how to wrap this one up because it's just kind of upsetting because I feel like this man got away with it,
Or the
Yeah.
other guy. Gotta say that.
or the other guy.
But it does seem like this guy.
The Texarkana Phantom murders stand out as managing to stoke a frenzy of fear in a community that had been numbed to violent crime.
Aw,
As
man.
W.E. Atchison, a resident of the area who was 16 at the time of the attack, said, quote, "The big wonder for everyone back then was whether the killings were being done by someone who lived among us, and I still wonder
Yeah,
who did
you gotta
it."
wonder who
End
done
quote.
it.
Across 4 attacks, 5 people were shot to death, and 3 others were severely injured. As for who was responsible, that remains unsolved.
I kind of think it might have been like a different guy.
I will say that since the time of the murders, the town really has leaned into it. The movie that was made about this was called The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
Yeah, that
I've heard of
movie,
that.
and
I
it
didn't
was
realize
shit.
That was about that. I've never seen it, but the
Yeah,
good
that's
title.
about the Texarkana Phantom Killer.
Dang.
Well, I don't really know how to wrap this one up because it's sad.
good.
Positive. Here's a positive
Yeah,
spin.
let's do it. What do you got?
This made the town rally together.
And they thought, like, maybe we gotta stop being so violent with each other.
That didn't happen, but they certainly remember the murders.
Yeah.
Well, then they said, let's remember these murders
There
forever.
it is.
And I'm sure it's a lovely town.
Yeah, I've never been.
We'll have to go sometime.
Okay. We could watch the movie too.
Yeah, I'll
you
just
know.
watch
It's
the
a bad
Town That Dreaded
movie.
Sundown.
Yeah, we'll just watch the movie.
Don't watch the movie, it's bad. I haven't even seen it, but I know how bad it is. I'm kind of curious how Texarkana is now. Let's see. Railroads were. Okay, so it was made because of railroads. Oh, it's also got a bit of Louisiana in the name. Last month is August. We're gonna have a warm month. My place is having a warm month in like fucking October. I gotta scroll down to get to the Texarkana killer. Economy. They still got army stuff. Government. Okay, they are currently represented by Republicans. Blah, blah, blah. Blah. Okay. People that I don't really know aren't really talking about the killer. See. Oh, the governor of Arkansas grew up there. Let's see if Texarkana has it. Okay, there's a lynching. Blah, blah, blah. Just that stuff. Just census. Oh, a video of a Texarkana minister defending LGBT rights in a speech went viral online. That's based. Let's see. They don't really talk about the killer, which is like a bit odd. I will see you guys in the next one.